Hello, Rebels of the Sherpa Revolution. Normally, I start off this podcast by saying hi, but I'm going to start this one off by saying hydration. We know how important hydration is for our bodies. It's the thing that keeps us running, right? You want to be a well-oiled machine. You want to be running efficiently. You know what can help you run efficiently? Liquid IV. It is the category-winning hydration brand fueling your well-being, and the hydration multiplier is the one product that you are missing in your daily routine. It comes in a little stick that's a powder, and in just one stick, you get 5 essential vitamins and 2 times faster hydration than water alone. If you use it first thing in the morning, maybe before a workout, when you feel run down, maybe after a long night out and doing a little partying, you know what I mean? And even what if you have like a long flight or something like that and you just bleh, right? We all feel that way, bleh. So add this to your water, and that convenient packaging can go with you anywhere you go, even if you're going to the gym or you're traveling or you're at work and maybe you didn't have a great breakfast. At least it's something that will fuel you up in the morning, and there's a whole bunch of flavors that are available, like sea berry, strawberry lemonade, Concord grape, lemon lime, pina colada, tropical punch, watermelon, strawberry, passion fruit, guava, acai berry. Did I say that right? I never know how to say that. But those are just some of the flavors. Here's some statistics for you folks. 1 stick of liquid IV in 16 ounces of water contains 5 essential vitamins, B3, B5, B6, B12, and even vitamin C. And we all know how important those B vitamins are. It's got 3 times the electrolytes of traditional sports drinks. It's made with premium ingredients. It's non-GMO, and it is free from gluten, dairy, and soy. I'm going to offer you a great deal, Rebels. If you go to liquidiv.com and use offer code Sherpa, you can get 20% off of anything that you order on that site when you're shopping for some better hydration. So that's Liquid IV. Check it out at liquidiv.com. Podcast that you're listening to is being presented to you in cooperation with the SJ Network. If you're a person who'd like to appear on a podcast, contact Stephen Joyner at s-j-network.com. Let's get on with the show.
Today on Too Many Podcasts, it's Jim the Podcast Sherpa talking about podcasting on a budget. Plus, another installment of Sherpa Samples.
I'm sure that the Sherpa knows a thing or two about being cheap. Instead of having his DNA analyzed, he announced that he won the lottery, so all of his long-lost relatives would come out of the woodwork.
Welcome to Too Many Podcasts, the podcast about podcasts. Now, podcasting from the Sherpa Chalet on Mount Podcastia, here's your host, Jim, the Podcast Sherpa.
Hello there, Rebels of the Sherpa Revolution. Welcome to Too Many Podcasts. It is the podcast about podcasts, and you are listening to me. Wait, is it me? Wait, let me check the mirror. Oh, yes, it's definitely me, Jim the Podcast Sherpa. If this is your first time here, welcome to the show. And we've got a special episode. You know, we've done 10 seasons here in the course of 5 years. And I've had the honor of speaking to a lot of great celebrities and writers and singers, actors, directors, producers. And of course, since this is the podcast about podcasts, tons and tons of podcasters, many of them found on my own and many of them found through publicist extraordinaire, Mr. Stephen Joyner. But since it is our 10th anniversary, I wanted to do something a little bit different today. We've been doing a lot of little different things this season, I know. You know, I know some of you probably listen to this and they say, who put this guy on the air? Well, it's not really on the air, but you know what I mean. Who gave this person a podcast? I gave me a podcast. And I really wanted to do this to talk about what goes on with creating a podcast. In other words, to give you a peek behind the curtain at Sherpaloo Studios, even though there aren't any curtains at the Sherpaloo Studio, which has got me in trouble with the Podcastia police station. But that's another story for another time. I really just wanted to kind of give you an insight as to what do I do to put this show together? And I'm sure some of you wonder and say, what exactly is he doing? How is it coming out so nice, or how is it not coming out so nice? So that's why I'm titling the show Podcasting on a Budget, because I really feel bad when I hear people who say that they tried to podcast and they sunk hundreds and hundreds of dollars into equipment and software, and they just kind of gave up after a couple of episodes. And it's kind of disheartening, you know, because I would say for somebody starting to do this, you want to start out simple. And I figured I would help those people and And for those of you who are curious as to what I use when I create the show, maybe you want to create a show too. This will be a little bit of a class for you. I guess we don't really do too much training here on Too Many Podcasts, but what the heck? It's my show, and I say, let's do it. I'm going to be mentioning a lot of apps and websites, and keep in mind that a lot of these are free, and some of them do have premium plans. I don't spend a ton of money when putting the show together. Don't say that. That sounds like you with the hat. Let me continue with my lecture. It's worth checking out some of these websites or these apps. And, if you even have to spend a little bit of money, it will probably be worth it for you, depending on what you want to do. But I am going to talk about a lot of free stuff. And some of them, like as I said, also have a premium version. So just keep that in mind. And for those of you who are listening who are podcasters, and if there are websites that you use or apps that you use that are relatively low cost, and you want to mention that to me in Sherpalution, my social media websites, Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter, please do. And we can share that with the rest of our listeners. And we can even do a little follow-up on it if necessary. But anyway, here's what we do. Here's your peek behind the curtain. So the first thing you need is a platform to broadcast your podcast. These platforms share what's called your RSS feed. So when you do record it, it can be shared on all different apps at the same time. Like I'm recording through one, and through my agreement with them, they distribute it to other podcast platforms like Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Spotify. That's a big one. We're going to talk about Spotify in a minute. And they do the work for you. But, even if you sign up with a platform that doesn't do the work for you, but if you look online, there are websites that can tell you how you can connect your podcast to other platforms. And that's what I've done with a lot of mine. I think the one that I'm using gave me like 7 or 8, and I have, about like 25 where you can hear this podcast. 25? Wow. That's a lot of people who want to listen. I hope. That's the important thing, first of all. The one that I use is called Spotify for Podcasters. It used to be called Anchor, but Anchor was always owned by Spotify anyway, and now Spotify just kind of bought them out. And what does it cost me to use them? Absolutely nothing. Can you make some money with them? A little bit. I think I want to stop right now and reference a couple of episodes that we've had on with people who know a lot more about this stuff than I do. So if you want to check those episodes out, or even follow them through their websites or their courses that they offer, it is time well spent if that's what you really want to get into. So this past season, we had Adam Shively from the Podcasting Business School. It is a podcast that I subscribe to. He offers courses where you can learn to monetize your podcast. We had Dave Jackson on the season 7 finale. That's from January 5th, 2022. And he has a website called The School of Podcasting. You can really learn a lot with him. I had a lot of fun talking with Dave. If you want to learn more about audio, of course, the legendary Frank Verderoso was on last season. His episode aired November 30th, 2022. And Tiago was on season 6, and he actually owns a podcasting app where you can broadcast your podcast. So he knows a lot about podcasting as well. And we also talked to John a while back, which I think from season 6 or 7. It was March 3rd, 2021. And he does a podcast called From Podcast to Vodcast, where he talks about, the video stuff too, as well as podcasting. Also very important. I'm going to hop on that topic for a second. So anyway, I digress. Back to Spotify for Podcasters. Yeah, so you can do ads for them and make a little bit of money. Not a ton of money, but I'm sure if you build up a lot of listeners relatively quickly or over time, you get opportunities to make more money. But this episode really isn't about making money, but just kind of filling you in about Spotify. And they give you things where you can poll your listeners and ask them questions. What do you think? Just to really be in touch with your listeners of your podcast, which is pretty cool. My listeners know you can always message me or email me at jimthepodcastsherpa@gmail.com. Now, if you're doing a video podcast, of course, YouTube is the way to go. There are different ways to create your video. 2 ways that are free are on Skype or Zoom, and you can record those and then upload it to YouTube. And there you have it. It really doesn't cost you a lot of money. But, there are also video recording sites like StreamYard or Riverside FM. And those sites use a little bit higher quality audio and video when you're making your recording. So you want to make it sound nice. And while we're on the topic of sounding nice. Audio is a really important part of creating a podcast. You may ask yourself, do I need a microphone or do I not need a microphone? Personally, my opinion is you need a microphone. My very first episode that I recorded, maybe even one or two after that, I'm not sure, I did not use a microphone. The first one was actually recorded on my phone through the Anchor app, and it was a conversation with Allison Sharp, for those of you who were listening way back when. And eventually I got to the point where I said, you know what, I should use a microphone, and I have a computer, so we can mix all stuff together, and we're going to talk about that momentarily as well. The brands of microphone that I've used, I'm currently using, what am I using? A blue Snowball microphone. I know some people don't like them. Some people like them. I think they're okay. And previously I used one called a Samson, which I thought had really great sound quality as well. Do those cost a lot? $40 to $60. And if you look around online, you can get them on the A store, Amazon, and even some office supply stores and even some technical stores too, where they sell all sorts of broadcasting equipment. Even like if you look where you buy DJ equipment, you could probably buy a decent mic too. Do you really need to spend like $500 on your first mic if you're first starting a podcast? You got to know how to use it. That's a big part of it. So if you know how to use it really well and make your voice sound well and know how to mix it right, you're not going to have any problem. Like I was saying, you could do something for free on Zoom and then upload it to YouTube and not use any equipment. Will it cost you anything? No. But will it sound great? That's a little debatable. I mean, we'll talk about some tools that can help you sound a little bit nicer. That's a really big sticking point with me from the first episode. I think I kind of ranted and raved a lot about the quality of my audio until I got it to the point where I really like it. But it took some work and it took a little digging as to find some things that were going to make me sound pretty decent. Make me sound like a human being, which, believe me, is a really hard thing to do. Yeah, as well as recording, I've neglected to also mention two other sites that'll make your voice sound pretty decent, and I'm sure probably even better with a microphone. One is called Clean Feed, and the other is called Adobe Podcast. Adobe Podcast I haven't really tried out too much, but I understand, like, if you record something onto a file and upload it through there, it cleans it up for you and takes out a lot of the background noise. Clean Feed does it for you too. It gives you a nice quality sound recording as well. So you also have to know, if you really want to make it sound professional, is how to mix it, how to put it together. There is one app, and it's absolutely free. It's called Audacity, Audacity. That's what I use for a lot of my mixing and editing and putting things together. As you know, I have like little files and then we have to throw them all together. And I'll tell you in a little bit what I do with those files once they're all thrown together. You can learn to use Audacity through YouTube, believe it or not. There are some absolutely free courses that you can take and just take it from the beginning, and it shows you how to use all the little tools in it to make you sound nice and make it sound decent. And, they really have a lot of videos by voiceover artists too, and say, use these settings on Audacity if you want to sound like a real voiceover artist. So pretty cool. There's also one called Reaper that I've heard a lot of good things about. There's a trial version for that, and I think if you want to pay for it, it's $60, which really isn't too horrible. That's one to keep into consideration. And there's also another one called DaVinci that I don't really know too much about. There's some that can get really pricey, like Pro Tools and Adobe Audition. So, I mean, if you have access to these sites or apps, make use of them because they will help you out. If you are recording on a Mac computer, you are blessed with the app called GarageBand, and you can learn how to mix on that too. I've done some work on there. There, again, are videos that can teach you how to use it, and you get a really nice sound from GarageBand too, by the way. Really enjoyed that. So that's really, the portion with really getting it together and doing some of your recording. But of course, there's a little more involved for that too. Do you want a website? Like I said, I use Spotify for podcasters, but there are other platforms that you'll pay for where they will provide you with a website. So that's kind of built into the cost. So if you're thinking of using a website, depending on what else you want to do with your podcast, if you want to promote some products or services or anything else like that, that may be something that you will need to think about. I use a website that I subscribe to. It is called Podpage. It's built for podcasts, so I'm really impressed by it. I definitely can't say enough nice things about it. Either way, if you don't need a website, then you don't need a website. That's fine. fine too. You don't have to have a website. So then, of course, there's also the social media stuff, and that's free, but you can use that to promote your podcast as well. Also, I just thought of one called Headliner, where you can actually use little snippets from your podcast and promote them on your social media. And Headliner has free plans too. And what they also do for free is they will upload your episodes to YouTube if you're doing an audio podcast. You're not on video like this one is. So as you know, I do have a YouTube channel, and it is called Sherpolution. I know, big surprise. And that's where you can find a lot of my new episodes and very selected older episodes on there as well. And I really want to talk about that in just a second. And this is where really a lot of your design comes in too. One more website that I wanted to mention when I was talking about mixing and recording, there's a site called Auphonic, AUPHONIC. And I use a pay-as-you-go plan with them. You purchase so many minutes, and they basically master your uploaded files that you've recorded on, because you're saving these on MP3s or WAV files. And if you're a techie, you understand what those are. Those are the types of files that usually podcasts are saved on. And Auphonic is fantastic. Gives it a really nice professional sound. If only I was professional sounding. And I really enjoy them so much. And then it's been a big boon to the sound of this podcast as well. I got to give them credit. So again, design. We were talking about design a minute ago. And we were talking about design before, and it's very important to have something that's going to be eye-catching to attract the attention of your listeners. And that's really important, especially for a video medium like YouTube. Now, as I said, this is an audio podcast, so you don't really see a video when you're looking at this podcast on YouTube, but you do hear the audio. And it is also on YouTube Music, by the way. But to promote it, I've learned that it's important to create things called thumbnails, and you need some design there. And I have fallen in love with this website called Canva. I know it's been around for a long time, and I haven't really used it that much, but they are just fantastic. If you're using a YouTube channel, I highly recommend it. They have a free plan and a pro plan. The pro plan makes more designs available to you and a couple of extra features, but you can do a lot with the free plan. I can tell you that much right now. Right now, as of this recording, I'm sampling the pro plan, and I'm enjoying it. And there are also like backgrounds and stuff that you can use. Some of them are free. Some of them are premium. There are some that are paid, where you can actually buy the little elements that are in the backgrounds, or choose not to buy them and just take them out of your design. I take the thumbnails when I'm creating them that are already on Canva, and I just reimagine them. I'll make them different colors, different fonts, but I'll keep the style of the thumbnail to reflect this podcast and make it something interesting for folks to see. So if you're not sure what I'm talking about, if you look at the podcast on YouTube Music or on YouTube, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about when you see the cute little pictures by the podcast episodes. Those are all designed by me. I didn't pay anybody to do those. I know I'm not patting myself on the back, but I'm just telling you about it. What else can we use to promote? There's something called Pipio that I've discovered, which is also a pay-as-you-go, and that uses AI, and that's where I type in the scripts for the AI-generated characters to read. And you usually see them. Actually, if you were looking at my social media pages, you probably saw one promoting this episode as well. But that's what it's called, Pipio, Pipio. Also, for animation, there's one called Animaker, Animaker, and that's free. Again, there are limitations on it, but you can do quite a bit for creating promotion for your website. It is important to promote it because you want people to be aware. Also for design, there's something called Pixel Bin, where you might have an image that you're going to use and it's a photograph and you don't need that background, and you can use Pixel Bin to remove the background of the picture. And I have a couple of those reflected in my YouTube thumbnails. And lastly, scheduling. If you're going to use social media, there are sites that will help you schedule things in advance. So if you're doing a whole bunch of shows, and here's a little secret tip for you, Rebels, if you can, make several episodes at a time, especially when you're starting. Have about 3 or 4 ready, because sometimes, like me, you lose your voice and you can't even talk, so you can't record your next episode. But you have episodes that you recorded a few weeks ago, so you launch those. And you don't want to keep doing repeats over and over again. As you know, I've done basically a new episode every week since I've started. I've had a couple of rebroadcasts, but it's always on the week where there's a new episode that came out as well. I think in the future there will be a couple of more rebroadcasts, but we'll talk about that when the time comes. We've got a little time to worry about that. So you want to use something like Later, where you can schedule your posts for social media. Simplified, where you can actually create posts to schedule for your social media, or even if it's stuff that you've created on Canva and then just schedule them as well and upload them. It makes it a lot easier, so you're not doing it last second, because trust me, when you run out of your backlog, you're doing a lot of running around to make sure things are all ready in time for the launch of your next podcast episode. If you want to have guests on your show, they'll be getting like Zoom invites or Skype invites or whatever you may choose to use. And you can invite them with what's called Calendly link, Calendly. And that's a little site where you set up your open times and dates for interviews. So they just have to go there and they can pick a time, and then you'll get a message saying, oh, this person wants to talk to you on this day at that time. Makes things a lot easier, even if you're not setting it up in person through emails. But it saves a lot of back and forth. And actually what I do on mine is I actually post the rules, so I don't have to keep telling the people, that are coming on the show, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do this and this and this. It's all right there. So when they come on the show, they're already ready. They know what's going to happen. So makes it easier for them too. I also neglected to mention one other site that I've used, and it's good for recording and producing to make it sound really nice. And you can also advertise through them. They don't care how big the size of your podcast is. It's called Zencaster. And if you use the Creator Plus plan, which is absolutely free, you get a lot of stuff. So kudos to you, Zencaster. And if you hear the Liquid IV ad in the beginning, they will give me money if I make any sales. So go out and buy that Liquid IV if you like. Okay, I think I've given you a lot of tools and a lot of websites to go through, and I will list them on the show notes if you want to check them out. So there you have it. This is really what I've been using to create these shows for the past 260 episodes. Changing it up here and there, change is always a good thing, and there's probably more that I'm going to find out about as time goes by. Now you don't have to wonder anymore. And for those of you who are thinking of starting a podcast, this shouldn't cost you a ton of money when you want to set out and do your podcast. And now let's move into a very special Sherpa Samples.
It's theme week. It's theme week. It's theme week.
Oh, I know you've missed that song. And yes, it is a theme week when it comes to Sherpa Samples. And this week's theme is History Podcast. Yep, this one is for all of you history buffs out there who have probably been wondering, when is he going to talk about history podcasts? Well, this is the time, folks. So hopefully you are listening right at this moment. And when I decided to choose the ones that I was going to sample, I stuck with events in time and stories about people in history, as opposed to, the history of baloney or, the history of nose picking or whatever might be out there. And there probably is, trust me. So just keep that in mind. If you are a true history buff, these are the ones for you. And I think to start off talking about history podcasts, you can't forget Dan Carlin's Hardcore History. This is a podcast which is really done with a lot of detail and a lot of care. The episodes can be between 3 to 5 hours long, believe it or not. And the episode that I listened to was about the Pacific during World War II. And he cites a lot of references and tells a lot of different stories from different sources to really fill out the information that he's relaying. I actually thought that Dan Carlin was a history professor, but apparently he was a newscaster. Maybe he was a history professor at some point. I don't really know. But it's really very thorough. And if you like very detailed history, you can check out Hardcore History with Dan Carlin, and also Hardcore History Addendum, which is the stuff that they couldn't fit in the original episode. So, man, the guy does not stop. Also, Tides of History focus on Italy in the Iron Age, which was around 950 BC, which was basically the rise of Rome and the building up of all the cities in Italy. The history of Byzantium, the episode that I listened to was about the Third Crusade. I bet you didn't know there were 3 crusades. Yeah, there were lots of different ones. Also, I checked out Omnibus, which is hosted by Ken Jennings, that some of you may recognize from the Jeopardy TV program, and musician John Roderick. They are friends who are big trivia buffs, so they put a podcast together. And in this episode, they spoke about mad cow disease, which wasn't really too long ago. There were some podcasts that discussed royalty. Noble Blood talked about King Richard III, and I didn't know that he was killed in battle, and they never found his body until recently when they excavated a parking lot in England. And that's how they found him, and they identified him through the DNA. Really fascinating stuff. But they talked a lot about his life and what led up to the death in battle against King Henry. Also, the history of Egypt discussed Ramesses I, and the history of England discussed King Charles I. You know, not the one that's there right now, the original one. And they talked about how he ruled the country of England. British Scandal, which was one that I really liked, was a telling of the Great Train Robbery in Britain. And American History Tellers was also an interesting one about Hawaii's, or should I say Hawaii for our folks that are out there, journey to statehood. And they were originally a monarchy. And they talked about when the Americans moved in and basically took over the island, and the Queen's final days as ruler of that territory. And lastly, there was Our Fake History, which was an episode about the Clampers, which is a fake secret society. It's a really interesting episode. They talk about these people who set up this fake secret society and really made people believe that they were discovering something ancient when in reality they were not. So there you have it. Those are the history podcasts that I checked out. And if you are a history buff, I'm sure one of these will be music to your ears. And by the way, there is a history of Mount Podcastia, but I can't tell it to you without a note from my mother. So be that as it may, we will head on into the outro.
Let's get back to the Sherpa.
Sorry about that.
Normally, I'd like to say thank you to the guests who were on the show, but since there are no guests this week, I'd like to say a special thank you to all of the websites and the apps that have helped make this podcast what it is today. Hey, careful. This is a family show, you know. Be sure to check them out if you'd really like to get into podcasting. And, you know, if you've got questions, don't be afraid to reach out to me and ask them, and I will do what I can, and hopefully I won't screw up your podcast that much. I promise. And if you'd like to reach me, you can email me at jimthepodcastsherpa@gmail.com or on my social pages, Sherpalution, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and also YouTube, which is what we are currently working on right now. And if you leave us a nice review, please, on Apple Podcasts, you can be entered into a contest where you can win podcast merchandise. I don't know why we need the fanfare, but yeah, that's what you can win, podcast merchandise. So if you do that, write a nice review, let me know, and once we receive 100 reviews, we will be picking somebody to be the big winner. So you can hear this show right here on your favorite podcast apps, or Sherpalution.com, or again on YouTube, the Sherpalution channel. We're there all the time. We'll be back with a new episode next week, because what else do we have to do? I don't know. Lord, Mr. Bruce, let's head on out of here, and I will bid you all a fond adieu and an even fonder Viva la Sherpalution. See you next time.
Thanks for listening to Too Many Podcasts. Please disperse. You can go home now. I said you can go home now. Viva la Sherpalution. Viva la Sherpalution. Oh. Yeah, I'll come back now, you hear?
You know, Rebels, if you've been checking out some of my promotional ads on social media, you will be aware that I have been using a lot of AI programs to help me create ads. But you know what? There's a lot more uses for AI than just funny little videos. And I'd like to introduce one of our new sponsors, Podimo. It is a leader in creating AI tools for podcasters. Now, let's say you've got a podcast, or maybe you're even thinking of doing a podcast. You're probably wondering, well, how can AI be integrated with your workflow? I'll tell you about out Podium. As a podcaster, you know that writing show notes and creating chapters and transcribing episodes takes a lot of time, and it can cost you a lot of money too. But you know what? That's where Podium comes in. It's an AI tool designed specifically for creators and podcasters with the goal of making post-production tasks quick and easy. And in just a few minutes, Podium generates show notes, chapters, summaries, clips for social media, a full transcript, suggested episode titles, social media posts, and more. Whew, that's a lot of work for one little program. Your show notes are key to your podcast's success because it helps new listeners find your podcast and they'll know if it's a fit for them. You know, kind of like Too Many Podcasts. It also improves your SEO, that's your search engine optimization. Ooh, big phrase there. And overall accessibility. And with Podium, you can focus on creating a great podcast and let Podium's AI do the heavy lifting. But Podium isn't just for solo creators and podcasters. It's a game changer for editors, producers, marketers, agencies, and production studios. Teams that use Podiums are able to increase workloads, decrease turnaround times, and improve their quality. How does it work? Very easy. First, go to Podium's website, and you'll see that link that's right there in the show notes. You get 3 hours free just to try it. Pretty cool, huh? And using that link also supports this show as well. And you know what else happens? Because I'm a good guy. You use my link, you will get 50% off for your first month. So visit the site, upload an MP3 file, and download your files, and that's it. And if you need anything else, you can use Podium GPT to generate articles and any marketing copy you might need in seconds. Instant show notes, transcripts, chapters for your podcast or channel. This will level up that podcast. So check out Podium today.